if lovers rage, they turn another page. The fighting is worth the love they say. One love feeds the fire, one heart bears desire, one love who's crying now. Two hearts born together, who'll be the lonely one? One love who's crying now. Only sound.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first breakout session here in the main ballroom. Here to talk single tenant, dedicated in the era of cloud. Please welcome Doug Denny and Sean Wiedich.
Hey,
Hey.
we packed the house today.
Yeah, apparently we're not quite as popular as the cookies are out back.
Listen.
So thank you to all of you who are on a diet and decided to stay with us instead of rushing out to the dessert tables.
Yeah, we actually, hey gents in production, this is my other talk, and there's a legacy workloads discussion that we're actually having for this time slot.
Oh, wrong deck?
Yeah, it's wrong deck. It's okay, we'll do it live.
That's fine. Kevin, you got that? Let's see if we're... Switching it up, 1 second. It's great being live, isn't it?
Well, you know, when you have two talks, it also gets
It's a little
challenging.
confusing.
Had your name in it, and I think they're just going to swap.
I'm in both. Okay.
No big deal.
All right.
We're in
Very
great
good.
shape.
Well, let's introduce.
Yeah, so I'm Doug Denny. I'm the Director of Technical Marketing for our dedicated infrastructure business unit here at Rackspace. And so I focus on how we message our dedicated solutions on things like dedicated single-tenant storage, network, compute, and how we shape the strategy for connecting with buyers and I think a lot about the use cases that people are bringing to us when looking to buy things like EMC SAN arrays or F5 network solutions or HP compute.
Excellent. And I'm Sean Wiedich. I'm CTO of our enterprise division. So I wear two hats at Rackspace. My day job is, my team is the solution engineering, solution architecture group that recommends solutions to customers across our portfolio. So the technologies you've heard about today, our AWS offering, our Azure offering, our traditional dedicated solutions, my teams are the ones that work with our customers to make sure that we've got the right solution for the right workload, for the right outcomes for our customers. The second piece of it is I work very closely with our product and strategy groups, helping to define the roadmap, understand customer needs, and making sure that we're developing our products in order to be able to address those specifically for our larger, more complex customers.
And so today we're going to have, there's been a series of inspiring discussions about cloud this morning, right? From some pretty impressive folks. But now you're going to talk to me. And so, and I'm going to talk to you guys about something that's a little bit more, it can be perceived as a little bit more mundane, like in this world of cloud. Because, the reality is, when we're talking about single-tenant solutions, we're talking about enterprise infrastructure designed for the enterprise data center, and that solves a problem that is not necessarily new, right? These are challenges that people have been wrestling with for a long time. And that's an interesting job in today's world. A lot of times I liken it to being a psychologist, where I talk to people about problems that everybody has, but not necessarily things that people want to talk about at a party or a conference in the Bay Area. But that's what I'm going to do anyway, right? And because that's my job, and I think there's a lot of value in it, especially when we think about the types of audiences and the types of customers that still benefit from traditional technology, but delivered through our model as a service provider. So I'm going to get into the presentation. Thanks for getting that up, guys. Appreciate it. So this is a tweet. In fact, this isn't even a new tweet. This is from 2013, and this is from Rick Branson, who is he at the time was this outspoken infrastructure lead at Instagram, and Instagram was on the bleeding edge of adopting new AWS services, such as things like DynamoDB, right? And he has this tweet, which I saved many years ago because it sort of encapsulated this dilemma, this crisis, if you will, for people that live in the world that I do, where he says, while you kids are out there reading and writing to DynamoB, all you kids in the mission on your laptops, there's some poor guy out there trying to multipath a SAN that backs a virtualized SQL cluster. And it's pretty funny, right?
If you're into that kind of humor, yeah.
Right. If you have the luxury of being in this cloud-native world, and but this is kind of how this makes me feel as someone who deals with more traditional challenges, right? And even, I bet you Mr. Rick Branson probably still logs into a portal somewhere to submit his, paid time off, and that probably runs on less compelling technology, right? Not everything can be Netflix, and not everything is. There's not necessarily always an economic incentive to go take some like random web portal that you've been operating for 10 years and make it cloud native, right? What's the point? What's the economic return on that? And so the idea, though, is what Sean and I want to sort of convey is that doesn't mean you can't have nice things, right? There are options that you have available to you that can still make your life better for the workloads that are non-cloud native. And we want to kind of unpack this a little bit and talk about different models for consuming infrastructure that enable you to, again, have nice things, even if you're worried about things like SharePoint, right? And so we can kind of go back and forth on this, but look, cloud vendors are kind of part of the problem, right? And that includes us. Like if we've adopted a much more sort of pragmatic point of view as Rackspace over the years, but if you think back like 2010, right, 2011, we were kind of on the same train too, out there evangelizing how everything's got to get to cloud as fast as possible, and you're missing the boat if you don't. And that is actually a valid discussion to have, but it ignores this other ocean. There's a whole other domain of challenges that people wrestle with, right, around traditional infrastructure. I don't know if you have any comments to make.
And all of these are very much a infrastructure play, technology play, right? The reality is everybody loves the cloud, but some of your apps may not. Right? Multi-tenant solutions, multi-tenant environments, despite the seamless, simple, easy, sometimes aren't the right fit for the solution that you've got at hand, for the business challenges you're dealing with day to day. Customers coming to us and going, I really need to get out of the data center, but I'm reliant on a VMware technology for replication. I'm reliant on EMC. This is part of my disaster recovery plan that I have a commitment to my customers, and I have contractual obligations around. I'm not ready to make that jump, but I still need some benefits. I still need to go back to my CFO and say, we are saving money. We are modernizing our infrastructure. We are leaving legacy data centers behind, getting out of facilities that may not be up to speed, up to par for what is needed today. I was in a conversation a little earlier and someone said, yeah, this customer, they're looking to do an IT transformation. Their data center sits on a fault line right now. That's not an ideal place to be. I don't care what technology you're running. But you can't lift and shift all of that directly into a public clouds. But there are interim solutions that make that a more simplistic type of a transition, a little bit more easily managed than trying to make the change and reconverting an application overnight.
Right. Exactly. And we see this every day at Rackspace because we are, as a provider of both traditional enterprise infrastructure and public clouds and supporting third-party clouds suitable for cloud-native apps, we have a domain of experience that runs the gamut, and that kind of makes us a little bit more pragmatic, right, than all this sea of blue marketing would make you believe, right? And so the story, as that narrative goes, is that the path to cloud is pretty straight and easy. Again, if you look back at that marketing, what's taking you so long? You guys, dude, it's 2016. Where are you at? Why aren't you in the cloud yet? And this connects with people, right? Because we know that there are a lot of benefits of the cloud consumption model that are enticing to people and drive them to want to adopt it. But there's some repercussions of this, right? So if you work in IT, and I don't mean technology, I mean if you work in the office of a CIO, you work in an IT organization, and your role in the business is governance and accountability and security of the infrastructure that the business consumes, you have a different set of priorities, right? And so you're put in this position where there's external pressure on your stakeholders driving you to embrace cloud. All the stuff that's been beaten to death in all the industry discussions, right? And so again, I don't know, what are our experiences? We see this all the time. Good evidence of this is we see RFPs come across from prospects. And the prospect goes something, the RFP goes something like this. I'm sunsetting a data center. We have all these workloads, but our business cannot be compelled to keep investing in the data center. Who can help me just get all these things in the cloud, right? And we see countless examples of those.
Yeah, and the beginning of the year this year was really interesting. I swear all the CFOs of the major organizations went home and read some document that said huge economies if you can move to the cloud, and went to their IT directors and said, hey, go now. And they're coming to us going, I can't explain to him that my application's not ready for that. I can't explain to him these application dependencies I've got. How can you help me get there, right? This application may not be ready for it, but I may have other pieces that are. And so they're struggling with, what are the interim steps I can take until my applications are cloud ready, until I start developing cloud native applications. And what we're actually seeing is we still have customers coming to us today, as bizarre as it sounds, with early 2000 Sun Gears, with mainframe infrastructure, right? Because the applications that are on those are important to the business, but not important enough that they've decided to re-platform them over the last 15 years, and they're trying to deal with this. Right, now those are an outlier, but it just speaks to the long tail that certain IT decisions have in terms of your future roadmap and platforms you're able to consume.
That's right, and through those experiences time and time and time and month and quarter over quarter, what we really know is that the path to cloud, if you're an organization that largely operates out of your own self-run data centers, looks a lot more like this. I'm not sure where that is, but it's
I think that's Austin, Texas, actually.
Yeah, it might be Austin, Texas. And because there's constraints, right? There are dependencies to unravel, right? Yeah, I heard this a ton when I was with this other outfit, where folks would actually love to bring a workload into the cloud, but the issue they had was, for example, hey, this app would even run well in the cloud. I could lift and shift it, but like all of our data lives on this NetApp array that like a bunch of our internal like back office management systems write to, and then what do I do, right? And so again, that makes for these dilemmas that slow people down, and these are inhibitors to public cloud. And these are a lot of those inhibitors, right? We've got analyst evidence of stuff we already know anecdotally. Sean and I were at VMWorld a few months ago, and we got invited to this customer dinner, EMC customer dinner, where we hung out with a bunch of EMC customers, and they were like IT director types. And it was great because we got to sort of be the cloud folks that showed up to talk to this core set of customers. But I found it strange because we didn't really have a lot to talk about on the topic of cloud. A couple of the folks who were in the audience or in the dinner group were celebrating the fact that they had just migrated a bunch of infrastructure off of Solaris onto x86. Right, and so they kind of like it was a funny anecdote because it sort of highlights the challenge, right? If you're still just making moves from like Solaris to x86, what exactly are we going to talk about with respect to public cloud, right? And so, but again, what can we talk about, right? And so that has caused this sort of false dilemma, this false dichotomy in the conversations that we have in the marketplace, where most of the time it seems as if the options are your data center or the public cloud, and that's it, right? And most of the technology out there from vendors kind of looks to solve one domain or the other, and there's emerging areas like enabling technologies that are allowing for hybrid scenarios, right? This more pragmatic middle ground, but to be possible between a customer's data center and ours. But we want to drill into this. So what is this pragmatic middle ground? If it's really unrealistic for you to like leave your data center and step out and walk into the public cloud, what is a pragmatic step? What does that actually look like? Strangely enough, it's not very exciting stuff from a technology standpoint. But it's really just about the tools that the service provider consumption model gives you as a bridge toward the cloud. Our goal, Sean and I think about this a lot. So what are the drivers to the public cloud? People were looking to increase the overall productivity of their staff, right? Improve resource utilization, service delivery, and agility, all these sort of cloud value prop messages, right? But the interesting thing is that when you look at what inhibits people from having that in their own data center, it's not the fact that cloud software somehow unlocks this. It's the fact that usually when you're doing things in your own data center, the way you're even buying technology is slow, right? So maybe we walk through like what does it look like when a customer needs to add capacity to a system in their data center?
Yeah, it's a long process, right? There's vendor selection, there's vendor negotiation, there's ordering process, there's legal contracts, negotiations, there's receiving and shipping, and there's staging and testing, and it's a really convoluted process for central IT, right? And the reality is, in this day and age, I'm still talking to IT organizations that are saying it takes me 30 days to get a server online from the moment I decide to go. Right, and that feels ridiculous. Certainly to the gentleman that on Instagram that was having fun with his newfangled databases, but that's still the reality inside of internal IT organizations. That is a very lengthy process because of the all of the controls and just slow-moving organizations and the multiple handoffs. Right,
Yeah.
And so companies can come to us and they can see advantages right away in terms of leveraging platforms like VMware or Microsoft's cloud platform. Advantages in the underlying infrastructure and how quickly we're able to move that they can't see in their own data centers and their own facilities.
Right.
Now this isn't to say, and I love this slide and this graphic, this isn't to say not to go to the cloud, right? Well, I'm not saying by any means don't go to the cloud. If I take a look at this, there are applications that are going to be slower moving, right? You're in that lane, you're trying to push, you're trying to make progress, but the reality is there's impediments in the way that will prevent you from doing that. You might need to consider a different path on your way to get to where you need to go. But then you got the carpool lane, right? You got the fast lane. You got people zipping by. You've got greenfield applications. You've got leveraging SaaS providers. You've got more modern capabilities that that you want to be a part of your internal IT organization. But you've got to be able to have both, right? And if you want to be able to efficiently get to the end, you've got to figure out which bucket does your technology come into? How do I make incremental advances, potentially using a private cloud or some of the existing tools in our data centers? And then what things are appropriate to be able to accelerate and fast track, to be able to provide that first step as you make your way towards the cloud?
Yeah. So and this is a conversation that we have frequently at conferences, right? So we'll go to VMworld.
I think we had it last night over drinks.
Well,
But
probably, yeah, we did that too. Yeah,
we're very excited to hang out with last night.
we'll go to VMworld, and people will approach our booth, and they'll say, "Oh, Rackspace, okay, the OpenStack guys, right?" We'll talk a lot about cloud. They'll ask us a lot of questions about cloud things, and they're shocked to realize that actually a lot of our managed VMware solutions are at the forefront of a big portion of our revenue, right? So our managed VMware offerings drag behind them a whole host of revenue from the underlying network devices, storage, and compute. And we have built an impressive amount of expertise operating VMware-based virtualization platforms. And so it's interesting because I don't feel like our brand is well known outside of we've got a really great brand with small to medium businesses and enterprise line of business customers, right? But only through our efforts in private cloud have we really begun building awareness over the last couple of years with central IT organizations. And so what I then go on to talk to people about is, what are you doing in your data center and how's that going? And so anyone in the audience ever done a proof of concept with a multi-vendor proof of concept, right? You have a new initiative, you've got to integrate some sort of control plane or virtualization software, you've got to vet it with the compute platform that you're choosing, maybe it's HP, right? And then you've got to validate that the storage array they're using for this new infrastructure, that this all works together. And you get in the situation where you're spending millions of dollars just to validate, both in human time and actual spend, just to validate the fact that it's safe to spend more money with these vendors, right? And that's got to drive people nuts. That's what drives people like Rick Branson to be like, I sure am glad I don't have that problem. So what can you do about it, right? And again, I think this is part of what service providers do, right? Baked into the way we deliver our solutions, you inherit all of that from us. You inherit all the validation that we do and the integration of all these technologies, and we streamline the way people can actually consume this technology from a variety of vendors. And so I wanted to stop for a minute because I'm pulling up an old ancient Rackspace slide. 10 years ago.
ASP.NET.
Yeah, this is an old one. And 10 years ago, when I was around and you were around, if you were listening to, if you're on the business end of a discussion with a Rackspace sales rep, you probably would have seen this slide. Because at the time, what we were doing was explaining to the market a long time ago what managed hosting was, right? But I still like this slide because while this isn't really something we have to beat people over the head with out in the SMB and line of business space, I think for a lot of IT buyers, they're still like, oh, what is this? You know, at least that we encounter. And it's the idea that when you look at sort of everything in the red, a lot of that stuff ceases to be your problem. And what remains above the red line on the managed hosting bar is where you get to focus, right? And if you look at sort of the goals of what IT organizations are doing in this modern era, it increasingly is about the business value they're providing back to their stakeholders through delivering applications, because there's not a lot of business value in cabling and procuring, you know, arrays, right? Or managing logistics and budget for drives, right? And so this is all the stuff we take off your plate. And so when you think about like new technologies, like the promise of software-defined data center, software-defined networking, well, imagine a scenario, right? Those things provide a lot of value, but up until the point where your storage array runs out of physical disk space, and then you're in a procurement cycle waiting to get the infrastructure there to add capacity, and all this stuff is like your whole operation's held up while you're dealing with like the meatware-defined data center underneath the software, right? And again, you can choose like to focus on those things and make them your problem, but there's another way, right? And this is really at the heart of what service providers do for IT. We take a lot of the mundane stuff that really shouldn't be your problem and allow you to take that time back and focus on things that are more connected to what's valuable to the businesses that you serve and the stakeholders. So, and this is just, you get this logo slide, and the point here is that, you know, in any given project, right, you have a new initiative that requires you to spin up infrastructure in your data center. There might be a whole host of vendors that you're working with to procure and do an integration project with, right? And so you might have network devices from Alert Logic and Brocade and Cisco, and you might then require storage from EMC or NetApp, right? And all this stuff has to come together, right? And a big part of IT's job is like, again, validating that these things work. And by the way, you've got like contractual procurement stuff. You got to have paper with these folks, right? You're managing budget. And again, what if there's another way?
And what's interesting, you know, we have become, with our expertise, experts at integrating all of these pieces.
Right.
And Doug and I were sitting again in the bar. This isn't a common thing, but we just happened to be there for lunch today, sitting in a bar, and I pulled up a diagram that was really impressive. Okay, maybe after this you want to ask some questions, you know where to find us. But we had pulled up a diagram, again, because we like looking at squiggly lines and boxes, at a customer solution. And it's a really progressive customer, actually. You know, they're in the healthcare space. They're a SaaS provider. They're working with very large healthcare organizations. So it's critical to them that they have the uptime, availability, performance that these customers on the other end need. And this particular solution that they were developing had almost every one of these technologies in it. Right? And so the customer didn't have to go and vet an F5 versus a Brocade switching to be able to connect you to the EMC versus the Cisco firewalls versus Alert Logic doing log management and intrusion detection. We brought to the table an understanding of how these pieces can fit together. How do these provide value? How can your application leverage these? That we were able to take all of these pieces, put together a very, very complex diagram that ultimately we take the customer and say, if you choose this platform, we'll be able to have this up for you in a matter of a couple of weeks. And we know, based on our experience, that it will work. And for those customers looking to get out of the data center, that's a big concern, right? If I'm running a data center, it's that fear of, if I put it in another provider's facility, what's my experience going to be like? Do they have the capabilities, the experience with the platforms, the vendor relationships with all these companies to be able to help me? This is what we can bring to the table for those companies that are looking at a private cloud or a virtualized environment as a next step towards getting legacy applications out of the data center, or as an interim step to being able to get all of their applications into a multi-tenant public cloud.
Yeah.
It was an impressive diagram.
This is an impressive diagram. Yeah, they literally used everything. That's great. And so so when I started getting into like waxed a little philosophical, right? Like when talk about like okay, great. What are you going to do, right? What do you have? And so an interesting, like a use case that's been extremely interesting to me now for months is this idea of the data center extension use case. And this is one you see a lot of coming out of VMware literature. But this is this idea that, you know, as a service provider, it is unrealistic for us to approach IT organizations that we've never done business with and say, hey, just leave your data center. bring it to us, right? We know that it's not going to happen in one move. That's ridiculous. But what is realistic and pragmatic is finding ways to make it increasingly appealing and possible for customers to interconnect their data centers to ours so that our data centers become an infrastructure endpoint that operates as an extension of theirs. So if it's our first dance together as a customer, we're going to acknowledge and embrace the fact that your data center is still, the primary target for deployment of all things that matter. And we're going to work together to figure out what comes over first and what is most practical to move. And so things like Rack Connect Global is an enabling technology for this. And Rack Connect Global is an iteration of a long-running Rackspace product that was originally designed to provide connectivity, sort of join the network universes of dedicated infrastructure and public cloud in a Rackspace data center. But Rack Connect Global is actually a solution that helps solve this challenge of connecting your data center to ours and connecting our data centers to third-party cloud providers like Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure. And so what this does is instead of asking IT organizations to put their workloads and connect and let them be accessible out on the internet, right? That's kind of, again, that's sort of an irrational leap of faith for them. We can instead do private connectivity from their data center to ours. We don't even have to enable access to the public internet, and we can have all ingress egress go out through that private circuit, riding on the back of, if necessary, Equinix Cloud Exchange into the customer's data center. So it's a logical extension of their infrastructure. And then from there, we can offer them familiar technologies in our data center that are the same technologies that they operate in their own. Because again, I need to drive this home. Rackspace is really, we're opinionated in the way we deliver best practices for specific vendor technology, but we are not opinionated about which vendor technology you use. If you are a shop and you've hung your hat on the Microsoft or the VMware way of life, it again is ridiculous for us to expect you to change that way of life and trust us to do business with us in our first interaction. That's not realistic. So we like to offer customers an easy glide path into working with us, and then pragmatically, workload by workload, piece by piece, with our experts, help customers replace workloads as we get to learn more about what these things do.
There's a lot of complexity in here, so this is where I'll put in a shameless plug for my team.
Right.
My team is, when you do get to that point, right, typically the first move is, I'm going to take an application, a platform, I'm going to move it like for like. When you start looking down the path and try to figure out what does a road to the public cloud look like, or are there ways that I can use OpenStack to be able to offset some of the licensing concerns that may exist on other platforms, that's where our team of experts can come in and help you. Let's sit down, let's have a workshop, let's have a strategy session, figure out what your end goal is and how we can help you get there over time. We know it is not a big empty highway to get you from point A to point B, but we can help you plot out the path to be able to get you, to help you to evaluate the various technologies, how they can help you to be able to realize the goals that you've set forth.
Absolutely. And so I view Rack Connect Global, again, as this sort of secure, reliable network foundation or glue between your data center and ours. And that sort of paves the way. It builds a really great foundation for future software-defined networking technologies that we're evaluating, rolling into our products to take the hybrid story even further. And I can't talk a lot more about that, but look for watch VMWorld closely, and maybe you'll learn a little bit more about what we're doing there.
Doug's Twitter account, VMWorld.
Yeah. And then all of us too. At the end of the day, we, as you know, if you've paid any attention to our marketing or are a customer, our biggest body of intellectual property. I mean, we've written some cool software. Don't get me wrong. But probably the biggest, most valuable body of intellectual property we have is the way that we organize ourselves to allow expertise to flow across silos inside of our business, right? So when I talk to enterprises and listen to some of their challenges, a lot of them have, a lot of the things that they wrestle with have less to do with technology and more to do with like process. And I work on the storage team. I've got to get the network team to make a change to enable this functionality. I'm trying to utilize my array, but I've got to submit a ticket and it's going to sit in a queue for a week or two while I wait for them to get around, like that kind of stuff. And our big intellectual property body is like how we organize ourselves so like that doesn't happen, right? So the people that we have being both a provider of more traditional enterprise infrastructure, but also cloud infrastructure, are well positioned, arguably better positioned than anybody else, to help a customer as they move from their current state in their data center to the cloud native world, because we actually deal with both sides of the problem in what we do at this company. And your team, right? I mean, those SEs, actually, I encourage people to come to the 4 o'clock session, all 5 of you, and come listen.
One of them's on the panel, so.
Okay, yeah,
So
and come listen to how our SEs tackle this problem. We're talking pretty high level and theoretical here, but our SE is going to drive deep into like the way they work customer by customer and helping them figure out which platforms make the most sense for the workloads that they're moving out of their data center. So, anything to add?
No, they're a great team. You should come meet them.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we are about 5 minutes ahead of schedule. I wanted to open for questions if anyone has any. Cool.
Oh, going up here.
There you go.
I've been working on a hospital, and I was very interested in the presentation that they did earlier about the infrastructure, and there's so much with HIPAA about where the data has to be and that sort of thing. There's still, by law, a need to have certain data in a physical site. How, and I think maybe the marketing is kind of going past where the regulatory requirements that IT people have to abide with. Are you able to really deal with the fact that people need to keep certain things on site?
So the question, if I can summarize, is relevant to HIPAA and other compliance certification regulatory type of mediums, is it seems like, and I'm sure the marketer up here loves this comment, marketing has moved beyond what the compliance from regulatory world will allow, right? Particularly in areas of healthcare, in finance, in transactional data, PCI. That's one of the big drivers for customers to continue to look at this, at these types of platforms in a single tenant environment within Rackspace. I mentioned the customer earlier, the SaaS provider. They are handling insurance information. They're handling protected data. And because they're able to have everything on dedicated devices, they're using EMC storage, they're using Oracle databases, they're using our HP servers and all of the RMS security capabilities we had. They're able to attain that level of compliance and assurance that they can show their auditors to make them successful. They can't, it is, the fact that we're able to come and layer these services on very easily for them is something that they can't do in their own data center, right? So in addition to some of the operational the speed that you get, time to market, there are other capabilities that we're able to drop on that organizations can't. Brian does a great job of talking about all the threats. Who was in here prior to us, talking about all the threats, all the challenges, what's new out in the marketplace. Out in the wild, variants of and persistent threats and those types of attacks. So one of the advantages, which we really want to talk about, is you come to Rackspace and you can layer on these additional services to quickly add capabilities that most IT organizations aren't investing in or don't have the expertise to be able to do. But so the short answer, yes, absolutely. That's one of the big use cases for this is compliance, regulatory needs around financial services, around healthcare, around payment cards, to be able to assure customers that they have that custody of data throughout the entire transaction.
And I would say acknowledging too the fact that there are and will always be conditions, regulations, right, that demand that data or systems live in some physical locale, right? And so, which is exactly why what we don't propose is you don't need that data center at all, right? We're proposing you need that data center, you have your reasons, right? But let us see what we can peel out of it so that you don't have to keep investing in like power, pipe, and cooling and all those things that really are disconnected from the ultimate business value you're trying to deliver, right, to the other stakeholders in the business. So.
We talked a lot about customers that want to get entirely out of the data center business, and that's one use case, but you've also got customers that don't want to buy another data center, don't want to add capacity, and that's where the ability to use something like Rack Connect and install a private environment really appeals to them as an interim step to be able to mitigate that massive CapEx that comes with spinning up another facility. I think we have a question back here.
Support for like Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization. You guys have like a lot of Azure and AWS, and I don't see a lot of open source Hyper-Vs being available and supported by Rackspace.
So open source. So the question is there any open source hypervisor technologies like KVM in our traditional virtualization space?
Exactly. So, for instance, I'm moving from a traditional data center.
Okay.
That's what I kind of do is migrate these old businesses to like Rackspace and other clients.
Yeah.
What I'm not seeing is support for instance, for a nonprofit, they want their cost structure is a little bit different.
Understood.
And so moving to like open source Hyper-V would be something beneficial to a lot more clients. Is that something that Rackspace is looking to support?
I see.
If I'm moving from KVM to say, let's say your newer like vSphere or something like that, I have images that may not play as well as they would if I had like something like a Red Hat Enterprise.
Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization or something. Yeah, I think it's generally always been like a function of demand. We, as a service provider, bear a certain cost to bring a new product to market, to validate it and build support, like best processes and standard operating procedures around it. And so it's always just a function of demand, unfortunately. I don't know that to date we've seen huge volume to drive us down that path. That said though, what we also don't necessarily do is get in our customers' way if they have a compelling reason to do it on their own. We do have a lot of customers that do manage their entire virtual plane themselves. They choose to opt out of our offerings and just lease the infrastructure from us. And there's nothing stopping customers from making that decision.
I'd love to sit with you afterwards.
Yeah.
If you can come over here and understand the use case better.
Yeah.
I love working with nonprofits, and I know everything is about. I sit on a nonprofit board. I know everything is about cost optimization,
Yeah.
and so happy to talk to you about it and see if there's somewhere across our breadth of portfolio we can help.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're at time.
I think we are at time. I want to thank folks for coming and to our session. And again, if you did enjoy the content and you want to go the next level deeper, do come to the 4 o'clock session where our solution architects talk about the way they work in the day-to-day, helping customers make these decisions. So, thanks for coming.
Thank you.